Hey there, folks. This is Parker Thune, the co-publisher of OUinsider.com. Let's you and I be honest with one another for a second. Oklahoma's heading into year one in the SEC. You want the best insider coverage of OU football and recruiting that the market has to offer. After all, it just means more now. Well, I've got great news for you. I and the outstanding team at OUinsider.com have that coverage for you, and we're running an outstanding promotional deal this week and this week only that enables you to jump on board at minimal cost. Between August 12th and August 16th, you can use promo code SEC24, that's all caps SEC24, to take 75% off your purchase of an OUinsider.com subscription. That means you'll get full access for an entire year for less than $3 a month. I hope to see you over on the message board shortly, folks. We'll make it worth your while. Become an insider today at OUinsider.com.
Hello, Sooner Nation, OU Insider subscribers, Coach Brian Clinton and Travis Davidson enthusiasts, people who cannot believe that we are just about 2 weeks away from OU season opener against Temple. This is the podcast for you. This is another episode of the Oklahoma Drill. I am Jesse Crittenden, and making history here on the Oklahoma Drill, the first ever non-Jesse or Brian guest, it's my good friend, Travis Davidson. Travis, you know, you're on KREF. You contribute for us during the season with your Girl Boy season or your Girl Boy series. You do the JP and Trav show. I don't know what you don't do, but I know you've got a busy schedule. Thanks for hopping on, man. How are you doing?
Man, I'm doing great, and I'm looking forward to actually deepening my relationship with OU Insider on the content side. We've got a whole new series coming out this season that I don't think anybody knows about.
I was gonna say, I don't even know if I know.
Yeah, you might have to edit or post it for me or something, like you do the articles. But no, we can talk about that off air once I've got the first one done. It'll be a big, a fun announcement. Nobody in the market's doing it right now. I don't think anybody else could do it in the market, which I know might come across arrogant. It's not. When you see it, it'll make sense. So anyways, yeah, stoked to be on. And it's just excited to talk about OU football as camp's going on, as, we're looking on schedules and saying, oh man, what am I, like, game week is about here. So really excited. This is the best time of the year. So thanks for having me on.
No, of course. And I wanted to mention real quick, we were talking off air. You told me that you're something resembling swimming in OU gear, especially over the last few weeks. I see the hat, I see the shirt. All right, do you have too much OU gear at this point? Is there even such a thing as too much OU gear?
There's never such thing. At least in my opinion. There's a lot of people that maybe they don't wear OU shirts to the grocery store, or they don't wear them to the gym, they don't wear them, out whatever to a sporting event or whatnot that has nothing to do with OU. You're gonna find me in OU gear all the time. Because if somebody says, "Hey, nice shirt," like, I'll straight up start talking to them about, hey, like what do you think? Like, what do you think, of the season? What do you think of the SEC move? It's just, a lot of people talk about conversation starters. These are the conversations I want to have. So when people are like, oh, hey, I wore a yellow sport coat because it's a conversation starter, I'm like, yeah, but the conversation is, hey, why are you wearing a yellow sport coat? Like this conversation starter is, let's talk OU sports. So got this fresh out of the pack. You can see how white it is. That is from University Traditions. They've got a lot of the like state outline hats that they do with the ropes. This one's got the white and black rope. I didn't have any white hats with black bills. So I really like this with the Oklahoma overlay over the state. And then this is Charlie Hustle, back from their collection they came out with. They did a whole Big 8 line with, bomber jackets, with shirts, 1985 title shirts, all kinds of stuff like that. So, excited to continue to get gear between them and Reddy and the boys over at Shop Double Team and Hard At It and all those guys. Couldn't be happier with the partnerships that I've formed with all of them.
Well, and with OU jumping into officially getting into the SEC, there's no better time than now to shock up on some new gear, man. So
Yeah.
hell yeah. Wanted to mention to everybody out there. Obviously, I'm usually joined with Brian Clinton, Coach Brian Clinton. He's not able to be here right now, unfortunately, or well, he and his wife just had a baby boy, which is great news. But unfortunately, there's been some health problems and some complications since the baby was born. So he and his wife are in the hospital, tending to him as they get everything sorted out. So thoughts and prayers obviously out to Brian and his family. Anybody out there, if you could send some good thoughts and prayers their way, I know they'd appreciate it. It feels a little weird to be doing this. We've been doing this for about a year. It feels a little weird to be doing this without Brian, but Travis, I'd say you're more than an acceptable substitute. So
Appreciate that.
we need to touch on a couple of fall camp things with the season coming in just a couple weeks. But before we do that, as anybody who listens to this knows, I'm a big fan of playing games within pods. I like a good draft. You know, I like to put spin on things. So I briefly mentioned this to you, but I wanted to play. This will be the first time on this pod, something of a true or false game, where I give you a premise, and you tell me if it's true or false, and explain your reasoning. And so you're a little bit of a guinea pig or a test subject.
I'm down,
if you will. So the first thing, and I almost feel even silly mentioning this, but it's been something of a talking point. So I'm just gonna throw it out there, and you tell me what you think. True or false? There's a quarterback competition in Norman, Oklahoma, between Jackson Arnold and the rest of the field. You tell me, true or false? Because that's been something of a talking point with how good Michael Hawkins has looked in fall camp. Casey Thompson's had good moments. Is there any truth to that? You tell me.
So, knowing that Parker Thune of OU Insider, our colleague and my colleague at KREF, is the president of the Michael Hawkins fan club, has been for, I think, 2 terms now. I'm the vice president. So who knows what happens? Maybe I'll get to take over on the ticket later this year. I have no idea. But with that being said, it is false that there is a QB competition. It is true that the quarterback room is competitive.
Yes.
And that this is not a situation where, like, you know, it's total. This is gonna sound unfair, but 2021, the quarterback room was not competitive. There was no QB competition, and it wasn't competitive, right? With oh wait, no, I'm thinking 2022.
Oh, yeah.
That makes more sense.
Right.
2022. Behind Dylan Gabriel. You saw Texas. I saw Texas. I talked to my therapist about Texas.
I was going to say, I can't stop thinking about
So anyways, that was not a competitive room. This, Michael Hawkins Jr. is going to push Jackson Arnold, I mean, as hard as he can take. If at some point in the season, Michael Hawkins wins the job, it's because he's so good that he can't be kept on the bench, that he's so good. And I think part of the issue, Jesse, with the conversation around the quarterback competition is they're saying it because Jackson, like they're saying, oh, Jackson's not practicing very well, so he's coming down to Michael Hawkins' level. I think that's slightly misrepresented. I think, and Jackson has played better by all reports throughout camp, just as anybody going up against a year 3 Brent Venables defense would do with a little more time. Like, I don't want the conversation to be let's tear down Jackson to be down with Michael. The fact of the matter is, Michael Hawkins, I'm not sure we've had a quarterback that looks like him. I mean, because the dude's got muscles where I didn't know you could have muscles. He's blazing fast. He's got a big arm. He's a smooth runner. He's, everybody thinks, oh, well, we had Kyler. He's bigger than Kyler, significantly bigger than Kyler.
Yeah.
So that's going to pop a lot on like just watching them, like a get off the bus type situation, right? But Tom Brady doesn't have abs, you know. Aaron Rodgers doesn't have abs. You know, Mahomes probably at one point had abs. Like we know Kirk Cousins has abs because he was doing the chain dancing video and he had abs. What I'm saying is don't wrap up the entire quarterback position in how they physically look. Look at the results. Michael Hawkins is a certified badass. But this is not a quarterback competition. Jackson Arnold is your starter week 1.
No, look, I completely agree, and I don't mean and when I said earlier that I feel ridiculous bringing it up, it's not. Look, I think the most poignant thing that you said was that you don't have to tear down Jackson to bring up Hawkins, and I think the reality is Michael Hawkins has looked fantastic. I've been in open practices. I mean, really since the spring fall camp, he's looked great. I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that he already might be the best downfield thrower that OU's quarterback room has. He's been that, like, everyone's going to talk about his dual threat ability and his ability to get outside the pocket, which he can, but that dude's got a cannon. He can throw.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure.
But having said all that, Jackson Arnold has been not only positioned to be the starter right now this season for months and months and months. It's been that way. But I think we have to somehow find a balance between not taking fall camp seriously and putting way too much stock into fall camp. And the reality is, to me, this Brent Venables defense is so experienced now. There's so many guys that have been in the system. When look at the offense, man, they're still trying to figure out the offensive line. There's still some guys with some bumps and bruises, not to mention you've got a new offensive coordinator now. I know you've got a new defensive coordinator too, but it's not the same thing.
I mean, technically, yes.
Right. And the reality is anything that happens at fall camp, we're really not going to know until we actually start seeing some games and, on the field. But Jackson's a true sophomore with one career start under his belt. There's been so much pressure put on him. It's essentially an impossible situation for him to be in, right? As a true sophomore going into the first season in the SEC, I'm high on the offensive line, maybe higher than most, but you've still got a new offensive line group. I don't know. Is there any, he's going to be the starter week 1, and I think it would take him just not getting it done, or like you said, Michael Hawkins playing so well for there to actually be a change this year. And right. It's nothing to do with how good right? Would you agree with that?
It would have to reach a point where you're worried about losing a bit, like splitting the locker room.
Right.
Like that, it would have to reach that point where it's like, okay, this is just painfully obvious. Or maybe like if you go out and get beat by Tulane, and it's because of turnovers or whatever. But I said it going into the bowl game, it was like, guys, we've all been stoked on Jackson Arnold all year. There have been a sect of the fan base that thought Jackson should have started over Dylan last year. And that's what that cracks me up the most, is like people last fall were like, oh, Jackson might just start. He's that good. And then now all of a sudden, like, it's just every year. It's going to happen with Kevin Sperry. It's going to happen with Jaden O'Neal. It's going to happen with whoever's there in 2027. I get it. It is what it is. But yeah, I think Jackson's going to be fine. And I'll just wrap that there so we can move on to your next true false.
Michael Hawkins is going to be a dude. We can say that while also not having.
True.
Yeah.
True. That one's easy. True.
While
next true false.
You can say that while having optimism in Jackson Arnold. I think both those things can be true.
Yeah. It's a good problem to have.
Yes. Especially, again, 2022. We'll talk about that some other time.
Yeah.
Travis, true or false? I think this one's a little bit more interesting. True or false? There will be a non-Gavin Sawchuk running back that eclipses 600 or more yards this season. True or false? And if true, who do you think that running back is?
I will go with true. It seems like low-hanging fruit, but I'll go with true and Javonte Barnes. Now, when the running backs have been talking about, talking with Seth and what Seth likes to do, like Seth wants to run the ball. Don't get it twisted. when he had been coaching with Bedenbaugh in the past, his brother-in-law, he was run game coordinator with him, right? He played in the backfield, running back, won a national championship, running back. His dad was a fullback that won 2, right? So you've got a running back now as your offensive coordinator. You've got one of his closest relationship that he has is Bill Bedenbaugh, the offensive line coach, and they've come up together as run game coordinators, offensive line coach, running back coaches, all that kind of stuff. They're going to run the ball. Like they're absolutely going to. So you remember the Cheez-It Bowl, obviously, where Gavin and Javonte ran wild. They both looked really good. Javonte had played most of the year. Gavin hadn't. He was battling, I think, a hamstring. And so Gavin was finally healthy. And we're like, dang, he looks crazy, climbing up to the next level. Javonte looked good as he had all year. And I think when people say, oh, Javonte, if he can go back to his, his former self, his freshman year, I don't think, like, when they talk about that, I don't think they mean, or they shouldn't mean, back to how he was at the beginning of that season through the end of that season. I think what they should mean is if he goes back to how he should have been a year removed or the next season off of that good campaign. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like not how he ran as a freshman, but how he should have ran after how he ran as a freshman. That's what he should be like. So with that, again, it's that Cheez-It Bowl. You remember, I mean, I'm not going to have you name everybody, but the offensive line was down talent, right? They were starting all together a game for the first time. And run blocking is significantly easier if you're still working through some offensive line stuff. Run blocking is significantly easier than pass blocking. It's easier to go forward than it is backward. So I think that I might be higher on the offensive line than you are. But that's why when you said that, I was like, yeah, right. So like I think the offensive line is going to be good. They're going to be fine. Like I think they're going to be much better than national media is making it out to be. Because Bill Bedenbaugh he stands on business, and just because there's 5 new starters, like there's 5 new starters because dudes left early, to go to the league. So it's not like, like 5 new starters it's a product of great development. So new, yes. Bad, no. So anyways, I think to help them out early, you're going to see run blocking, get downfield. Let's put some people on their back, the physicality, all that kind of stuff. I think you're going to see that from Seth Luttrell. So I will go Javonte, and I think Javonte has over 750.
I love that. Last season, I think I made, because I do the weekend before the first game, I usually do a official preseason predictions thing. I think last year I had predicted Sawchuk and Barnes to both have over 750. Now, obviously, that didn't pan out. But look, with all the talk about Caleb Hicks and how good he looked in the spring, and then Taylor Tatum and how quickly he's gotten integrated in the offense, I think the best case scenario here and the most likely scenario is the Sawchuk Barnes 1-2 punch that we expected last year, but maybe with Sawchuk in the number 1 role instead of, I personally thought it was going to be Barnes in the number 1 role.
Well, everybody assumed that, right? Because I mean, he was playing second fiddle to Eric Gray and spelling him quite nicely, really, and had some good moments. And you're like, all right, here we go, Javonte Barnes year. Gavin looked good in the Cheez-It Bowl, but it was like, you look good, man. I wonder what you can do in space with all that speed.
Right.
I wonder, like he didn't really. At least just after the Cheez-It Bowl, you're not like, Gavin's a starter next year, and he's a 3-down back.
Right.
Like, now, man, some of the pictures of him, like, summer workouts and whatnot, I'm like,
that dude,
he looks like an every down back. Like,
he does.
He looks like an every down back. So, yeah, I think the running back room's in great shape. Talk about Hicks. He can be a short yardage guy. He can spell some of those other guys. Really, last year, I talked about it over and over. None of our top 4 guys could stay healthy all year.
Right.
Barnes dealt with an injury all year, right? Sawchuk started the year hurt. Tawi was running against OSU on 1 leg. And Marcus Major, I'm not sure with all due respect, I'm not sure he's been through a season of college football without getting hurt. So it's like, when people say, "Oh man, we just couldn't find a go-to running back last year," like it's not their fault they're getting hurt. Like
Mhm.
and now Javonte Barnes had cleaned up. He's 100% good to go now off of something he'd been dealing with since high school. Sawchuk end of the year, you could see that confidence. He got back in his hamstring, good to go. Obviously, Tawi's not here. Marcus isn't here. Tatum banged up a little bit early, but he's fine. Caleb, like, just stay healthy, and you've got, I mean, Sam Franklin. You've got a deep running back room. You can do some damage with.
A couple of things real quick to that point before we get to the third of 4 true falses, and that would be I was told Javonte Barnes looked really good in last night's scrimmage. I think there's been real buzz about him. I think Sawchuk is the number one guy until further notice, and that's been the case for a while. But I think Javonte Barnes, I think, has been impressive. I think he impressed last night. So I think that's encouraging. And then I'll just say, because I was at practice on what day was that? Tuesday. The offensive lineman that stood out the most to me, this is just an aside, was Eddie Pierre Louis. That dude's a hoss, man. He's a hoss. That dude's going.
He's just so big,
He's just
and
big.
he moves so well. And I think you're just not used to seeing an athlete that size
Yeah.
move like I should say this. You're not used to seeing somebody athletic, that's that big. And, you know, criminally underrated by all the recruiting services, let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Criminally underrated. I think it almost was like, oh, he runs track, like that's kind of a gimmick thing. Like, no. Bro is the real deal. So, you bring up EPL. Do you think he could have a Caden Green type impact this season?
I've actually had a couple of people mention that to me, that possibility, or that he's looked really good. I do think it's possible. Now, Caden Green, towards the end of last season, obviously became a big snaps starter guy. I don't know if I quite would expect that, even if a really good progression happens. But I mean, I think they're still trying to figure out not only who their guys are on the offensive line in terms of combinations that work together, who your for sure starters are, but also that offensive line is dealing with a couple of guys, or have a couple guys that are dealing with some bumps and bruises. All that being said, I don't think anything is definitive enough that you could say EPL couldn't eventually have a real role. And I'm just telling you, and I think you have to, I think you learn what stuff to put stock in and what stuff not to. And a little bit I got to see of the O-line and individual drills. Bill Bedenbow got on him for one rep and made him do it again. And then EPL did it again, and Bedenbow praised him after that. And that second rep, he was so fast, he was so quick and explosive, and he's just big, man. You would never think that dude's a freshman.
Would you put him in the I formation, in front of Caleb Hicks and 4th and 1 and just let him go kill somebody?
I will say, outside of Barnes and Sawchuk, as much as I think those will be the guys, Caleb Hicks looks like the least fun guy to bring down. Goodness.
Well, just physically, he looks so daunting.
Yeah, he does.
I mean, that's a different kind of looking back, but yeah, it's sign me up for some of that. You get EPL on on like a safety or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that'd be so much fun.
The third true false, I'm going to make this a little bit tougher on you, I think, because maybe those first couple were a little easy.
I appreciate you easing me into this.
Well, you may say this one's easier than I think, but I'm going to ask you about Payton Bowen, specifically his snap count. True or false? He will have more than 575 snaps in the year 2024. Now, to give you some context, and you might already know this, he had 363 snaps last season. 363. He played in every game, but he wasn't fully healthy, especially over the second half of the season, which I think limited his snaps a little bit. So it would be a little more than 200 more than he played last year. And only 4 guys on the defense played more than 575 snaps last season. So with that context, true or false, Payton Bowen plays more than 575 snaps?
I'm going to go true because I'm going to count special team snaps.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I think not only does he get a ton of action on defense, I think I want him to return.
Yeah,
I mean,
I do too.
because it's the big discussion we have every year, right? And I'm staunchly on one side of it and have, I mean, a mountain of evidence of smart coaches doing this, and Lincoln Riley. But play your best players. Like, give yourself the best opportunity to win. Like, there's sure DeMarco got hurt once. You can't keep living in fear. Like, if he can make a difference for you, like Payton Bowen can make a difference for you in the return game. Like Marvin Mims, like is a great returner in the NFL right now. Like I wish they would have let him return more. You know what I mean? Like put a guy back there that can. And people say the same about Deion Burks. They're like, oh man, well, I don't want him to get hurt. It's a physical sport, man. Injuries are part of the sport. Is what it is. Like just go out there and give yourself the best chance to win. And I think putting Payton Bowen and or again, we can talk kick, we can talk punt, but I think he's so dynamic. He's such a playmaker. And he's a little bit of a I mean, he's a risk taker, not quite, I think, as much as Gavin was, but he's a Billy Bowman level of risk taker, where it's like, in order to make those plays, you have to take risks. Like there were times Billy got beat last year, but he also had 6 interceptions. And it's like that just comes with the territory. It's like, your steals leader, in basketball. It's like you've got to, try and sell out every once in a while. So I think he's just got the right amount of risk in his game where I think he could be such a dynamic returner. And he was a dynamic returner when he was in high school, at a high level. So I am all for Payton Bowen getting as many snaps as he can on both defense and on special teams. And he's blocked a punt before. So use him however you want. But I want my best players on special teams.
No, I agree with you. And look, just for full context, one of my predictions is going to be I think Payton Bowen will play 600 snaps. And I think factoring the special teams snaps, which I think he will play, I think helps that. And also, I agree with you. Look, it's just time for OU to actually have a real threat in special teams.
Like
it's time.
There's 3 sides of the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we seen? I mean, really, that last Riley year, it's like would not allow Marvin Mims to run. There were times where Marvin had 25 yards in front of him, and if he just meets a defender halfway, and he stops him in his tracks, like that's another first down you don't have to get. You know what I mean? Like if you can improve in the kicking game, if you can make your longer field goals, the return game can put points on the board nearly immediately. And I'm not even talking about taking it to the house. Like you can just get up the field far enough where 1 first down, 2 first downs puts you in range. So yeah, I couldn't agree more with you.
I got one more true false to throw at you, but before I do, just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor this week. That'd be HelloFresh. HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients, seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store. Count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. From the planning, shopping, and prepping to actually getting everyone to enjoy what you made, family dinners can be stressful. HelloFresh gets it. They make it easy by delivering fresh ingredients and picky, eater-approved recipes right to your door each week. And for a limited time, kids eat free. Go to HelloFresh.com/OUinsiderKids to unlock this exclusive offer. 1 free kids meal per box for 2 months while the subscription is active. That's free kids meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/OUinsiderKids. Travis, the last true or false that I got to throw at you, and this is the most basic one ever, but I feel like you and I haven't actually talked about this.
Okay.
And we're going to get into the swing of things once the season starts, but we haven't actually talked about this. And it might be the most boring premise ever, but I got to ask you, true or false? OU finishes the regular season in the top 4 in the SEC. True or false? See, I made this one a little bit harder. A little bit harder. I'm putting you on the spot.
Okay, so top 4. I like Georgia and Alabama being in the
Okay.
top 2. Um, LSU has that defense, stepped up enough. They're going to lose a little bit without Jaden Daniels. Um, no matter how good Nussmeier is, he's not Jaden Daniels. Um, really comes down to like, okay, Ole Miss, are they, is their big NIL investment over the offseason, was that worth it? Will Lane Kiffin finally live up to expectations? Because I'm not sure what he's ever accomplished. But everybody's, top 5 Ole Miss, this, that, and the other. Texas,
Let me
I
hear
think
it.
Texas is going to be down. Like, I think Texas is going to be down. Like, and I know it's typical OU fan. Think of the Longhorns are going to be no good. No, dude. I keep on asking the same thing. What are you doing with your interior defensive line? You were the number 5 rush defense in the country last year. You were number 50 in the secondary or against pass defense. Your rush defense is going to fall off a cliff because not only did you lose the best defensive tackle duo in the sport, you lost Jalen Ford too, who's first team All Big 12, an NFL guy at middle linebacker. So you lose them. Now you're down your top running back and another scholarship running back. Like, you're going to rely on Quinn and a bunch of transfers, which, yeah, it can work, but betting on that seems a bit, I don't know, risky. And I don't know. I think Michigan, a lot of people are writing off Michigan saying, oh, Harbaugh's gone, Connor Stallions is gone. JJ McCarthy. I don't want to talk about it. But like they're still going to be a physical football team. And Texas is going to get punched in the mouth in the interior of that defense. Michigan may run the ball 50 times. So you've got that. I'm still not a believer that Quinn is elite. And again, I can point
I
to
agree.
what his preseason predictions were last year. First round Heisman finalist. Neither came close. And those are the expectations again this year. So I don't know why I'm expected to believe them now when I didn't believe them when he was or when they didn't happen against Big 12 competition. So Alabama, Georgia are going to be up there. I'll say OU finishes 4th in the SEC because
I love it.
I think Missouri takes a step back. They lost their defensive coordinator. They lost the SEC's leading rusher. Sure, they've got Luther Burden, but you have one of your biggest drafts you've had in the last 20 years. Usually when you see guys that are kind of on the edge, like that, they realize, hey, I'm not going to bolster my stock next year. Maybe it's because their defensive coordinator left. Maybe it's because, for whatever reason. But Missouri doesn't recruit to the level that you need to be able to replace early departures, good NFL talent, right? Like Texas does, Georgia does, Alabama does, Oklahoma does. Like, you recruit well enough to be able to restock, and Missouri doesn't. So Burden's a monster. I think Theo Weiss is going to have a good year. We'll see what they do at running back. They turned a walk-on into the SEC's leading rusher. So maybe that's something that they can just repeat no matter who's back there. Who knows? I think they've got an easy schedule, but I think they could take a step back. I'm not 100% sold on Tennessee. It feels like they, cashed in all their chips when they beat Bama that one night, tore down the goalposts, and everybody, the cigars were going crazy, all that. I don't know what they've done since. So that game almost feels like when Rex Ryan's Jets finally beat Tom Brady's Patriots in the AFC playoffs. That was their Super Bowl. They'd finally done it. They'd finally beaten their big bad wolf. And then I don't think he had a job like 3 years later. So 2 years later, maybe. So anyways, I think that's just how I feel about Tennessee. I know their defensive line's good. We'll see how much they fix their secondary. And we'll see what Nico's about. I know Nico's incredibly talented. I've seen him live, and he's impressive. But you're basically counting on Mizzou, Ole Miss, Tennessee, LSU to all be basically better than they were last year. And I don't quite buy it. I think it's interesting because Missouri's schedule last year, it looked like a really tough schedule.
Yeah.
Well, Tennessee, but like I think Tennessee was like the best team that they played or best team that they beat in the season. And Tennessee wasn't all that good last year. They looked good coming off, Heupel's best year there, but they didn't live up to expectations. So I think OU finishes fourth in the SEC.
No, I love that. I love that. And I had a vote in the SEC preseason poll, which means absolutely nothing. I want to make that clear.
Whoa.
I'm saying it. It means nothing.
Sorry, I was wearing a hat at the table. Sorry. Man, I didn't realize we were formal.
Well, okay, look, it's just I think OU is one of the toughest teams to really try to evaluate going into this season or in terms of the SEC, because there's a lot of reasons to be high on them. And I think if everything hits, I don't see a reason why they can't compete for the SEC title this year. And I mean that genuinely, or why they at the very least can't compete for a playoff berth, especially in a 12-team league.
If the offensive line is good, that's all that has to happen.
Yeah, and if Jackson Arnold's good right away, he doesn't even have to be. I don't think Jackson Arnold has to be an amazing top 5 quarterback for that to happen. I think he just needs to be good. I think an above average quarterback. And I agree with you. And I think it's even hard to evaluate the schedule because I think on paper, OU has an incredibly tough schedule. And they will regardless. It's a tough schedule. But I also think there's varying levels of how difficult that schedule could prove to be. Now, varying in terms of really hard to incredibly hard. But it may not end up being because I agree with you. I mean, like, it wouldn't shock me if we get to the end of this season and Tennessee wasn't an elite team, if Missouri wasn't an elite team. All of that is to say, I told Brian this the other day. I think the best way to summarize OU is I think they have the biggest difference between their floor and their ceiling than any other team in the SEC.
I could buy that.
Would you agree with that? Or
well, I would say from a standings perspective, yes. Like I think, like I don't think. When I think of floor and ceiling, like I'm thinking multiple positions, right? It's like, okay, we're counting on the offensive line to be good, but we don't know. We're counting on linebackers to be good, but we don't know. We're counting on safeties to be good, but we don't know. We're counting on wide receivers to be good, but we don't know. Like that's what, if you were to say a team has a low ceiling and a high ceiling and a low floor, however the variance goes, like that's what I would think. Safeties, we're set. Backers, we're set. Edge were set. Interior of the defensive line, especially with the Dominic Williams, we seem set. Wide receiver were set. Running back were set. Like, we think quarterback were set. They were trying to start him over first team All Big 12 quarterback last year. So we damn well better be set there. Or some people lied. And then, so it's just the offensive line, which again, I trust Bill Bedenbaugh. Like Ian Boyd can make fun of us saying, whoa, we just trust Bill Bedenbaugh. But when he's been here since 2013 and he hasn't had a bad line yet, yeah, I'm going to trust Bill Bedenbaugh. So, yeah, but I think from the biggest difference, it does, because I see what you're saying on the ceiling floor thing, because if the offensive line is great, our ceiling is super high.
Yeah.
If the offensive line is just okay, man, the league's so competitive and our schedule's so tough, it may drop us to 7th or 8th in the SEC. Yeah. So it's like the entire team, you're not dealing with position group ceiling, like a bunch of stuff that's got to come together. Just one position. And we brought in, 7 transfers, and we've got a bunch of blue chippers in there ready to contribute. We'll see.
You mentioned the wide receivers, and I agree with you. I mean, because you look at different position groups on the team. I don't think there's any reason to not be confident in the linebackers. I don't think there's any reason not to be confident in the safeties. I mean, you look at running backs, and at the top of that list is probably the wide receiver group, which I think is easily, or easily has an argument to be not only arguably the deepest room in the SEC, but one of the deepest in the country. But having said that, and we've known this for a few days, but Venables obviously confirmed that Jaden Gibson's out for the season on Tuesday, which anybody that listens to this will tell you, Travis, I have bought so much stake in Jaden Gibson Island. I am leading the parade. I'm at the front of it. I'm dressed out. I'm decked out. I'm getting the crowd to cheer along with me. He's a my guy. And that's been disappointing news to me. But
Yeah.
I haven't asked you about it. I have a couple of questions. One, do you agree with my stance as a Jaden Gibson my guy? And two, I guess three questions. Two, how much of an impact do you think it has on this wide receiver room? How detrimental do you think it is or potentially could be? And three, do you see JJ Hester or another guy in that room as potentially being a Jaden Gibson replacement or somebody who could fill that role? I'll leave it
Well,
to you.
You kind of stole the thunder by name dropping JJ Hester, because that was going to be, yeah, absolutely what I was going to bring up. Yeah, with Gibson going down, we said the same thing on the JP and Trav show talking about it. It's like, I thought that Jalil Farouk might be out of starting position because you'd have Jaden on one side, Nick on another, Deion Burks in the slot if you're just doing 3 wide receivers, XYZ. But I thought Jaden Gibson was going to earn a starting spot, and that's big because that's a very talented room. Every catch he makes is difficult. Maybe he had a little bit of growing up to do his freshman year. By all accounts, he's completely grown up and was ready for a breakout year. Looked good in spring. I mean, we don't have guys that look like him. 6'5", runs like a 4.5, I think, something like that. He's got a 35-inch vertical. Like, the dude's just, he was set for a big year, and he'll be going against he would have been going against some big physical corners. So yeah, it's super frustrating. But I do think JJ Hester is suited to kind of step into that role if they want the same looking kind of wide receiver. JJ runs between 4.4 and 4.5. JJ's got a big old vertical. JJ's 6'4". Like, you've got length, height, you've got speed, you've got, athleticism, and you've got production, question mark. He played in 13 games, as a redshirt freshman at Mizzou. Like, he's seen SEC football. He's played in the SEC. He's dealt with injuries the last 2 years. But if he's 100% healthy, and he's played a lot, and he's been in a lot of practices, he knows the scheme, he knows Emmett Jones, what he expects out of him, and now they want a 6'4", 6'5"-ish burner on the outside, opposite Nick Anderson on the other side. I think JJ Hester fits the role better than anybody, right? I mean, you're if you want that. And I know, both of the Zions would have something to say about it. Pedway would have something to say about it. Even if, I'm not willing to go all the way like Ivan Carey on having something to say about it immediately quite yet. I think he'll be really good. I'm just not sure that he was in line to take any of Jaden's reps. But I think JJ's the obvious choice, and don't get it twisted. I'm not boiling it down to he's 6'4". We lost a 6'5" guy. Put the tall guy in there. I think Clemson had some of those issues for a while where they just got all tall receivers and nobody could get open. So, I think between Burks, Anderson, if you had to put somebody out there and you kind of want to be in that mold where, okay, a 5'10" DB doesn't want to see JJ Hester get off the sideline, I think you give him some run.
No, look, I agree with you. And I do think the JJ Hester / Jaden Gibson replacement question is, I do think it's interesting because there's kind of unknowns on exactly what we're going to get with Seth Luttrell, right? I mean, you can dig through the numbers of what his offenses did at North Texas and North Carolina, but I think it's hard to know exactly what to expect. And because if this was Jeff Lebby, we would know. What did Jeff Lebby do last year? Ran almost exclusively through wide receiver sets. And you even look at the snap counts last season, it was Angel Anthony, Jalil Farouk, or it was to start the year, it was Angel Anthony, Jalil Farouk, and Drake Stoops. Then Angel Anthony goes down. Nick Anderson steps into that role. I mean, Jaden Gibson played in every game and finished with fewer snaps than Angel Anthony, who missed 7 games last season.
Right.
So
well,
it was,
and part of it was, I mean, I remember like he was in the package with Nick Anderson. So like they would always trot out onto the field at the same time and Nick would get the ball.
Yep.
Think of the TU game, right? Like when Nick scored all those touchdowns, Jaden was on the field like every snap. And it was not a bad idea to throw to Nick Anderson. Don't get it twisted, but it's funny to me that every time I saw Jaden Gibson run out there, he was right next to Nick, and they were just running out there, which is what a lot of us envisioned, right? Is those two big, athletic, they've become close friends. Like that, you wanted those 6'4" and 6'5" on the outside. This season was supposed to be the season where that came to fruition.
right.
And it's a bummer that it can't. And of course, when I say that it was going to be Jaden, Nick, and Dion, that is assuming Andrell isn't ready week 1. I think as we go, I think it's Andrell, Nick, and Dion, personally. Even more so now.
Right. No, I think I agree with you. I also agree with you that I think Jaden Gibson was going to start. I mean, every indication, because I've said this to Brian, but I think people have to remember, like, different players stand out to different coaches and can have more success in different schemes. I mean, Jaden Gibson was not a super big part of this offense last season with Jeff Levy. It's clear that he resonated with Latrell and this scheme specifically. I mean, he was a starter in the spring, and you're thinking maybe that's because, you know, Farouk's out, Angel's out, Nick Anderson's out. Maybe he's getting reps because those guys are out. Then you get to fall camp, and who's leading the individual drills? It's Jaden Gibson. Who's getting starting reps? It's Jaden Gibson. So I do just wonder, with his injury, do we see this staff double down on your presumed top 4 guys of Farouk, Burks, Andrell, Nick Anderson? Do you double down on those guys? How much had they come up with concepts, formations that specifically highlighted Jaden Gibson? And if they did, do you plug one of those 4 guys in? Do you plug JJ Hester in? How much is this coaching staff going to run 4 wide receiver, 5 wide receiver sets? It's just, I do think it is actually interesting. And I wonder how much of an impact, even in that regard, it's having. How much is it changing the way the coaching staff is having to approach this season now with Jaden Gibson on the shelf? And I do want to point out that Brent Venables said on Tuesday, the only thing that's held JJ Hester back is injuries. Yeah, he said that. He said that. Yeah.
So, well, like, you know, you bring up, do they stick to that kind of core 4? I think based on how the post Andrell Anthony season went last year, they will not, because like, I know they're best friends, still best friends, but after Andrell went down, Dylan was like, where's Drake?
Yeah. Where's Drake?
Where's Drake? I got to feed Drake. And Drake started, you know, breaking records and complete in catches, but he had a ton of targets, and I think he ended up leading the Big 12 in catches in the regular season. Like, anyways, like, he just had some big moments, and I love me some Drake Stoops, but I'm not sure I'm not sure only running, like, Nick Anderson obviously had some grabs down the stretch, but Austin Stogner almost got no looks. You know, I feel like it was like, hey, we got to get the ball to Drake because Andrell's out, and we kind of wanted to stick with these guys. I think with how that went, I think Brent Venables will make sure that a few more people eat. Don't get me wrong, Deion Burks is going to have a massive snap count. They're going to give him the ball any way they can. Nick Anderson's going to have a massive snap count. You know, Jaleel, Andrell, like, they'll have massive snap counts. But I think Brent understands, hey, look, if one of those guys goes down, we can't just be a one or two receiver show for the rest of the year, kind of like we were last year. So I think the way it went last year, I think Brent Venables will take another step in his understanding on how how to mitigate those risks going forward.
Well, no, I agree. And I do wonder if do they get crazy and want to split out someone like Bauer Sharp more? I mean, maybe they get creative with that look of it. The other thing I'm also interested in, just as a quick aside, is I think there's still going to be a lot of RPOs in this offense. And I think that's going to be the primary. But I do wonder if we see more power running and if that could have an impact on what formations this offense runs. What does that do to the passing game? Because historically, I mean, even those last couple of years at North Texas, which obviously Seth Luttrell was the head coach, not the offensive coordinator, but there were more just in between the tackles called running plays when we saw almost none of that under Levy.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think there will be. You've got as long as your backs are healthy, I think there will be. As long as the interior of the offensive line is able to do it. So I think it will be. Seth's MO, like you would think that if he's not going to use the power run game, we can't hire anybody at Oklahoma that's ever going to run a power run game. Like if Seth's not the one, just give up everybody. It's not happening. But yeah, I think that's a good point. How does like just we've had some really good blocking wide receivers at Oklahoma. Like how much does that come into the equation and say, hey, look, we need somebody, maybe, Brandon Thompson's a, track star. Do I want him, blocking a safety down the field? I mean, I don't know if I do. I want him running by dudes because that's what he can do extremely well. So yeah, I mean, obviously there's going to be a little more nuanced, and yeah, it's a good point. I think power run game could get you some different looks personnel wise.
Yeah. Well, man, I think that's going to do it for us here on this episode of the Oklahoma Drill. Appreciate everybody tuning in. As always, Travis, thank you thank you again for being willing to step in in Brian's absence. Appreciate you, man. People can check you out on the JP and Trav show every Wednesday. You guys live stream every Wednesday at 9, right, on YouTube?
We used to do Wednesday until Brandon and Parker said that, well, our show's more important. So they booted us to Thursdays.
Thursday,
so my boys said, hey, we want Wednesdays. I said, okay, fine. So we're Thursdays, usually 8 Central, 9 Eastern. And then I'll be moving on KREF. During the season, I do Wednesdays, 3 to 6 on the Rush. And then keep an eye out for other OU Insider content that I'll be delivering soon. So appreciate you, man.
No, plenty of ways for guys or for people out there to get hooked up with what you're doing. Everybody make sure to like and subscribe to the OU Insider YouTube channel. Go be a VIP member over on OUinsider.com. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next week.